Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome into Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. That is Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC and Locked On Wolfpack, Alex Dono of Locked On Canes, and this is your one-stop shop for all things college football. Thank you for making Locked On College Football Kickoff your lunchtime listen every Friday. Guys, it is rivalry week. This is the apex of madness in college. When you think about games that should go one way, this is the weekend where they go the other. Ken, let's start with you. When you think the best rivalry in college football, where it never matters, the record, only the score, where do you land? You got it, Dono?
I think you landed on mute.
I did. I did the thing again. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not technologically advanced. But here we go. The biggest rivalry, when I think of this, I think of there have been a lot of rivalries that have had documentaries come out recently, but I think of who had the first documentary that was published for everybody to see on one of the major networks and all that. And there's only one answer. The Game, ladies and gentlemen. It's so important. It's just called The Game. You don't need to name it any cute bowl. You don't need to say, you got Alabama and Auburn with the Iron Bowl. You got South Carolina and Clemson, the Palmetto Bowl. You don't need any of that. You don't need a Red River rivalry. You don't need any cute name. It's just The Game. It's the game where one school in one city blocks out every single M. In that entire city limits, of course, Michigan, Ohio State. That's got to be the game.
Dono, what do you think on this? Because I might have to disagree.
Really? Well, I'm not going to disagree, but I'm telling you, there are others out there with a lot of history. I think to this weekend is going to be the 127th playing of Oregon versus Oregon State, and there's no guarantee how many times we're ever going to see that after this year because of Oregon moving into the Big Ten and Oregon State, their conference situation. So that's a big one to me. That one's one. I've been watching documentaries on that going back to the Joey Harrington days at Oregon, so that one sticks out. And then just like in terms of pure craziness, guys, how many weird scenarios have we seen, especially over the past 10 years or so, in the Iron Bowl? I mean, this is the 10th year anniversary of the Kick Six. Auburn's going to be honoring that team for this game. It's a home game for Auburn this year. Obviously, Alabama has been a well-oiled machine during the Nick Saban era, and they've really found themselves this year, and they've still got an opportunity to get into the college football playoff. They've been playing their best football in the second half of the season, yet you still head into that game thinking, wouldn't be crazy if Auburn pulled something off. They played Georgia closer than they played New Mexico State this year, so you never know which Auburn is going to show up, right? Yeah. So crazy things happen in that rivalry as well.
All I'm saying is Zach Blackerby, before he cut his beard, Auburn was playing well. All of a sudden, the host of Locked On Eagles cut it. And then what do we have there? I'm just saying, Locked On Auburn, y'all might want to blame your guy.
Which, if Auburn is to lose to New Mexico State and then beat top 5 Alabama, top 7, 8 Alabama, that would be the most Iron Bowl thing of all time. To me is what makes the Iron Bowl. I think it's the best rivalry in college football right now. Now, this varies by decade as well. Think about the off years that Michigan had even 3 or 4 years ago when they weren't quite up to par. They've had a tumultuous decade, whereas Alabama and Auburn, despite coaching changes for the Eagles, for the Tigers or War Eagles, whatever their mascot actually is, those have made even in those, the rivalry has been so top notch. Now, think about USC Notre Dame. That used to be like when you thought the big rivalries in college football, that was up there. These things rise and they fade out of style. Sometimes it's BYU and Utah. There's a whole religion they fight over in that game every year, and they're bringing that rivalry back. And of course, Texas and Oklahoma, Red River rivalry that occurs in the Big 12, moving to the SEC. But all of those put together, the game being at 2, I'm going to go Alabama-Auburn. I'm going to go the Iron Bowl as my top rivalry in college football for the amount of times it has determined an SEC title participant in the last decade or a national championship participant in the last 15 years for those two teams. But moving away from the holistic view of rivalries, this week, you got games like Ohio State and Michigan, Oregon State and Oregon. Even a game like Washington State at Washington, those little ones could trip you up or make things interesting this week. Let's start with a big one, though, in my eyes, anyone's eyes. It's the game. Kenton, Michigan's a machine at this point in the year. I don't know how you can bet against them.
You got to be more physical than them or at least match their physicality to beat them. And I don't know if Ohio State can do that. However, Ohio State has a real bad man in that 1-8. I'm telling you what, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's another one of those guys that, to quote Lil Wayne, I'm just stunting like my daddy. He shows up, he gets open, he makes contested catches, he makes something happen when he has the ball in his hands. And I'll tell you, that's one of the only receivers that I've seen win a game single-handedly. Because let's just be honest, in that Penn State game, y'all watched this game the same that I did. Who on that field stuck out to you besides Marvin Harrison Jr.? They said, all right, here's the game plan. Get the ball to the Italians, kicking and screaming style. And who was the Italian on that day? Marvin Harrison Jr.
Maserati Marv getting it done. He's good. Look, he's good. You're going to have, is this, Dono, the game where these two teams bring out the trick plays? Is this or do you keep it ground and pound? What is the makeup of this version of the game where it really is a college football playoff appearance on the line?
Well, I will say this game has, for more than the last 20 years, been won on the ground. The team who has the most rushing yards in this game, has won every meeting since 2001. That's the way this game has gone down.
That's insane.
So that shows you, I mean, obviously easier said than done, but that shows you the path to victory tends to be controlling the ground game. So I don't think this is necessarily one for the trick plays, especially since these teams are close. I've been arguing for most of the season. I feel like Michigan is the best overall team in college football. But a month ago, I would have said, I don't think Michigan gets particularly challenged by Ohio State. I'm changing my tune on that to the point where I look at that 3.5-point spread in Michigan's favor, and I wonder if Ohio State might even cover that. I don't like 3.5-point spreads, right? I can see this game getting decided by 3 points in one direction or the other. And boys, over the past month or so, for what it's worth, I know they're both undefeated, so you nitpick. Ohio State has been descending. Ohio State has been ascending, where Michigan has been slightly on the descent. Their quarterback nursing a little bit of an injury. They don't have their head coach on the sidelines again for this game. So McCarthy, how is he feeling? Cade McNamara on the other side has been playing a lot better in recent weeks. I could see Ohio State making this game really, really, really close. Obviously, I favor Michigan because they've been the better team all year long, whether Harbaugh's on the sidelines or not. But I think this game could come down to a 1-point game-winning touchdown or game-winning field goal scenario.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, before anybody from the Big Ten gets mad at us, he meant Kyle McCord. He knows what he meant. It was a slight slip up there.
Oh, what did I say?
You said Cade McNamara on the other side.
My bad.
What are the two? Jaden McCarthy is starting. We know what we're talking about here, okay? Look at his shirt. That is a man who is knowledgeable about all things, fashion and otherwise, okay?
There's a lot of stuff going on that shirt. The Italian ad read guy. Should mention, too, I know we have a lot of very rabid Auburn fans that are out there. I do know they're the Tigers and that they say War Eagle and they have the Eagle. It's just, I grew up. I repping my Arkansas gear today because it's the one. Just go win. This is the week of no matter how your season has been. It's just go win. From rivalries that play in stadiums that are 50-50 to your Alabama Iron Bowl with Auburn to we talked about the game and then the one tonight, the Friday night game that means so much to the Pac-12 and to these two schools, Oregon State and Oregon. Dono, I'll be glued to this one. It's kind of your marquee game you set aside for Black Friday.
This is one of those where in Oregon are big favorites in this game, and you just have to wonder how much is that rivalry aspect going to come into play. Now, when you talk about quarterbacking, Bo Nix, he's like 24, 25 years old, but in his 6th year, he's having his very best year, and he's right in there at or near the top of the Heisman conversation. Oregon is the better team. There's still a path to the college football playoff for them and a path to a conference championship. I just look at it like they can't slip up tonight, guys, and I don't think they're going to slip up. But again, this is one of those rivalries where sometimes you can throw the records out and you can throw the spreads out.
Yeah. Kenton, what do you see in this one? Do you think Bo Nix blows it away?
Here's the thing. I think that Oregon wins it, but I think the spread is much too big. 14 points is insane. Let me tell you something. This Oregon State team can run the ball. I don't care what the conditions are. I don't care what's going on. If they can't do anything else, they're coming downhill, no frills, with one of the bigger, more powerful, more explosive backs in the conference and in the country. And they're going to do so successfully. Now, we have seen Oregon stop the run successfully multiple times. So you say to yourself, well, Damian Martinez won't be a big problem. Not so fast, my friends. We have seen this time and time and time again. The minute you count out Oregon State, the minute you say the Beavers have got nothing for us, boop, a little Beaver flash, they're there. They're going to get the job done. And I don't think that they win this game, but I think it's much closer than 14.
Boom. Look, I have already this is the weekend of college football for me. And for many teams, it's the last weekend of college football. This marks the end of the season for effectively half the fan bases in the FBS. But two of those that don't have to worry about that, Ohio State and Michigan. Let's break it down more in depth with Locked On Wolverines host Isaiah Hole. Locked On Wolverines host Isaiah Hole here on Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Isaiah, in what might be the biggest. Let's start there. Do you consider this to be now the biggest installment of the game between Michigan and Ohio State? Can you call it that with so much on the line?
I thought you brought me on here to talk about the Egg Bowl last night, but I guess we can talk about that other thing that's happening tomorrow. Yeah, I would say that this is certainly the biggest iteration of the game because you have a lot of different things going on. You've got Michigan and everything that's kind of been surrounding the program off field with the Connor Stallions thing. You have Ryan Day, who's 1-2 against Michigan. I mean, he hired Jim Knowles last year to try to fix his defense, only to get more put up on them last year. You've got Jim Harbaugh not being on the sidelines. You've got J.J. McCarthy, who I'm hearing from a source, kind of a third-party source, but I'm hearing from a source that J.J. didn't practice last week, which kind of could explain a little bit of why with his knee injury, why perhaps he did not look nearly as crisp as he has through most of the season. You've got Kyle McCord, who's been trying to kind of cement himself as a guy who's in the same stratosphere as a lot of his predecessors. There's just so many different things that is going on in this game. I mean, you've got both ESPN's College Game Day in town. You've got Fox Big Noon Kickoff. I mean, it just doesn't really get any bigger. And when you consider the field that's out there in the college football playoff rankings at the moment, it's not like last year where the loser could potentially find themselves still going. Ohio State needed help last year. It seems like they're going to need whoever. I'm not saying Ohio State. I'm just saying whoever the loser is going to need a lot more help than Ohio State needed last year to kind of backdoor their way in. And you add in the fact that the Big Ten's going divisionless. It's going to be the top two teams, and you're adding 4 Pac-12 schools, and the college football playoff is expanding. So perhaps the luster of the game deciding everything kind of goes away after this year. I mean, I don't know if it's for sure the biggest. It certainly feels that way, though, because the stakes are sky high in this one.
Now, listen, we talked about the fact that the winner on the ground has won this game time and time again and all that good stuff. And we know that Michigan has one of the best running back duos in the nation with Corum and Edwards. But tell me, what do you think, or who do you think will be the X factor in this game in terms of if Michigan wins, this guy needs to perform well? What does that look like for you?
I'm actually going to kind of flip that question around, and I'm going to say that if Travion Henderson does not perform well, Michigan wins. I think Michigan needs to contain him. I know everyone's looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. as being the guy and saying, oh, Michigan's number one plan is to stop him. I think that slowing him down is certainly a high priority, maybe 1B. But I think that slowing down Travion Henderson, who after coming back from injury, who has looked electric in 3 or 4 games, he's a guy that if he gets into open space, it's kind of done, right? So I think that, you look back to 2021, Michigan really, I mean, he was kind of in the same boat. He was just absolutely on fire as a freshman, talked about as the best running back in the country. Michigan really slowed him down and then kind of forced Ryan Day to go to the pass a little bit earlier than, I would say earlier than he wanted to, but we all know Ryan Day wants to go to the pass. That's kind of what he wants to do. So I think that he is the big X factor for kind of both teams in the sense of, can Michigan slow him down? Can Ohio State get him out in space and get him running? But outside of that, I mean, this is Blake Corum's first time being healthy playing in the game, which is kind of crazy to think about. He played in 2021, but he was pretty severely injured. He had one big play, but that was really a Hassan Haskins game. I mean, Blake didn't play in the previous 2 weeks against Penn State or Maryland in 2021. This time he comes in healthy. Last year, Donovan Edwards hadn't played in the previous weeks and then comes in with the club in his hand, unable to be involved in the pass game, but certainly obviously showed some electricity in the run game late in that game. So that I think is going to be an interesting matchup. Ohio State's defensive front is no joke, but obviously Michigan's got the offensive line it hasn't quite lived up to that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line we've seen each of the last 2 years. But certainly against Penn State, when seemingly somewhat by necessity, whether it was the pass protection, JJ's injury, all that kind of stuff kind of combined, Michigan went to the run against the team at the time that was number one in the country at stopping the run. And was it like absolutely gashing them? No, but they got big runs that we kind of hadn't seen all year. The Michigan run game tends to step up kind of when called upon. I think back as well, Nebraska, no one's going to write home about Nebraska really. But when Michigan played Nebraska earlier in the year, that was the number one run defense in the conference. I believe they were number 2 in the country at that time. They're still ranked really highly. Michigan ran the ball very, very well, and that opened up things against in the pass game. So certainly that's going to be Michigan's MO. It's just going to be how improved is the Ohio State defense at stopping it. And for Michigan, the big key to me, above all else, is slowing down, if not stopping, Travion Henderson.
Ann Arbor has been the epicenter of the college football universe this season, off the field and also on the field, because despite everything going on off the field, I've argued for most of the year, I think Michigan's been the best team in the country throughout the season. And you're so much closer to the program, Isaiah, than we are in terms of how players and assistant coaches have handled everything with Harbaugh and with the Stallion scandal. Has it brought them closer together? Because sometimes in situations like this, it can become a powerful rallying cry for teams.
Well, after the Purdue game, Jim Harbaugh said that with everything kind of swirling around the program, he called it in terms of how it affected the players, a priceless gift. And I do believe that to be the case. I think the funny thing is, I've talked to some people that are within the building there at Schembechler Hall, and they know all the nuances of all these different storylines, all the rumors and innuendos, many of which I've been told are absolutely true. We talk about that on Locked On Wolverines all the time here. But it's the players, they're not paying attention to the outside noise, right? Like, and I think that's partially too, when you look at a game like Penn State or a game like Maryland, they go into Penn State and Jim Harbaugh gets suspended on the plane ride over. Certainly they had heard a little bit about that, but nonetheless, like their mind wasn't really on that. Their mind has been on football. So when they hear that and they know Michigan's going to fight it, and they think that Jim Harbaugh is going to potentially be on the sidelines for Penn State, and then he isn't out there, find out about an hour before the game, no Jim Harbaugh. I think that has an effect, right? Chris Partridge getting fired for misleading NCAA investigators last week. They found out via social media. They had no idea. And then they're about an hour later, they're on a plane to College Park. So I think that the fact that they aren't paying close attention to everything weirdly helps them in a lot of ways, because they know what people are saying about them. They certainly hear that people are calling them cheaters. Now, listen, the players had nothing to do with any of this, right? Like the players are, and again, I've said this a lot on the show myself, like, a lot of people are conflating some of the rules. The NCAA can decide kind of how to interpret its own rules, but to act like this is just a blatant disregard for the rules and everything that happened, it really did occur in a gray area. But the players weren't really affected in as far as that's concerned, right? They're going to the weight room, they're going to practice, they're doing all this stuff. They have no part in it. So when they hear that the only reason you guys have won any time in the last 2.5 years is because you guys are cheaters, I mean, they take exception to that, right? Because they really turned around the culture. This wasn't a program that was out there winning all these big games with regularity. It always seemed like Michigan was in Penn State's shoes. They beat up on everybody that was lesser than, and then against the teams that they were equal than, they would kind of lay an egg. 2020 happens, and everything just kind of falls off of a cliff. And then you have all of these senior leadership that comes in the next year and says, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to put our focus where it needs to be. And then you have the coaching staff that institutes things like the Beat Ohio drill, all of these different things that kind of help them get over the hump. I mean, this is a player-led team. This isn't a coach-led team. This is a player-led team. So I do think that they take a lot of exception to that, and they want to quiet all of that noise. Will it happen on Saturday? I mean, I have a prediction that it will, but I mean, it's not going to be a slam dunk by any stretch of this is the hardest game of the year. And Michigan has utmost respect for Ohio State. And it's just going to be about replicating kind of what happened, I think, 2 years ago and being able to control the line of scrimmage.
Coming up, we have Sell Me Why with some of the biggest spreads in college football. But Isaiah Hull of Locked On Wolverines, thank you for being a part of Locked On College Football Kickoff Live and giving us perspective on the game.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Guys, you have to be checking out Game Time. If you've ever had a frustrating last-minute ticket buying experience, that can become a thing of the past when you download the Game Time app. Guys, their best deals are last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, a musical, a comedy show. You can find everything at Game Time, and they're going to pop events in your area right to the top of your screen to make things even easier. And folks, the Game Time guarantee. That's going to make you feel good and sleep well at night. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
It is time for the sole reason that I was invited to host Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, and that was to sing. Tell me why. Auburn, Alabama, the Iron Bowl this week. The Auburn Tigers are 13.5-point underdogs against the number 8 team in America. We kick it to my dad, Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn, to sell us why the Tigers can cover 13.5.
Auburn's going to need a lot to go their way Saturday at Jordan-Hare Stadium if they're going to cover against Alabama and take care of. Auburn's going to need a lot to go their way in the Iron Bowl. I'm Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. I'm going to sell you why the Auburn Tigers can take care of business against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And let's just be very clear here. Alabama does not like playing at Jordan-Hare Stadium. They do not like coming down to Auburn to play that half of the Iron Bowl. And I think with the way Auburn's defense is played down the stretch, with the exception of last week against New Mexico State, I think they can do some things that will slow Alabama's offense down. So then all the attention turns to Peyton Thorne and Jarquez Hunter. Jarquez Hunter will get more carries than he did a week ago and will be able to move the football against the Alabama Crimson Tide. This game is weird, and it's always weird in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Just 2 years ago with Brian Harsin, it went to 4 overtimes, and Auburn's a much better team in that now than they were in that game, and Alabama's probably not as good of a team as they were in that game. This game's always close in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I expect that to be the case. Auburn covers the 13.5-point spread, courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. Check out all your Iron Bowl coverage at Locked On Auburn.
I know Zach was very nervous to join us today, so I'm glad that we got the nerves shaken out, and he was able to give us he was able to sell us why. Dono, look, I am of the mind. We've had a couple of these games this season where, on paper, Auburn loses this game by 2 touchdowns, if not more. Alabama's the much better team. Auburn did just lose to New Mexico State by 21 points, 31-10. But I'm sold in the fact this is one of those few games where the host can say, yeah, they're going to cover because it's a rivalry game. this is the matchup where that applies, where Auburn could be a 21-point dog and take it to overtime. I still think 14's too much.
Especially in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And by the way, Zach sold me why. I thought he did an excellent job with that. And no, I'm buying Auburn. And listen, part of it is the fact that, in a rivalry game like this, betting Alabama minus 13.5 really is no fun. I root for chaos. And this matchup, you talked about this, Drake. You said this is your favorite rivalry in college football. Yeah. Chaos rules in this matchup. And I'm also, with Auburn, I like the opportunity to buy low because, they're coming off of one of the more catastrophic losses in program history. I usually tend to like to buy low. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game last week against New Mexico State. There is no more looking ahead. This is it. This is the big one for them every year. It's a home game. I'm taking Auburn plus 13.5. I think Alabama wins the game. They might win it by one score. They might win it in overtime. Something wild's going to happen, but I am buying Auburn plus 13.5.
Kenton, question from the host with hair in the front row. Mm-hmm. The idea that these rivalry games can be anybody's game. As someone who has played in these rivalry games, why? Why is this a thing? Why are there just matchups where it's the other team, the color of the jersey, the name across the chest that just makes things weird?
Because you absolutely hate those teams. And it's something different. It's something different, right? Like, you can feel a personality shift from coaches sometimes in terms of, like, we're not just playing the Island of Misfit Toys University in week 1 as a tune-up. We're playing that school that if we were to go 1-11 on this season, or if we were to go 11-1 and lose to these bozos, there's going to be a problem. Now, here's the thing. Zach Blackerby was a little nervous to join us. He didn't do a great job of selling me his case, but the history sold it for him. The reality is, in these games between Auburn and Alabama, especially in that old town of Auburn, in Jordan-Hare, you see these games be ridiculously close. I've looked up how many games in total for either side were outside of this 13.5 for either side. I believe there was only 1 or 2 in the last 10 in Auburn. So I believe that Alabama wins. I believe in Money Mill Row. I believe in Kool-Aid McKinstry. I don't believe in a blowout in this game. Zach, you were nervous, but you sold me why.
Well, and let me add something else when you talk about in-state rivalry games. And obviously programs like Alabama and Auburn do a lot of national recruiting, but still much of the bread and butter on your roster are players from the area. I'm talking to players, obviously I cover the Miami-Florida State rivalry every year, talking to players over the years on both sides. One of the common topics that always gets brought up is a lot of these players grew up playing against each other or as former high school teammates who now line up on the opposite side of that rivalry. That's absolutely the case in the Iron Bowl as well. That's one of the reasons why you can throw out the record, because obviously Bama, much better team, but there are players on the Auburn side that say, hey, that guy who's lined up for Bama, I beat that dude in high school. I matched up against that dude in high school. I beat him then, I can beat him again. That's one of the reasons why these in-state games tend to come down to the wire.
Auburn has also won 3 consecutive SEC football games. People forget due to that game last Saturday, but Auburn was on a roll headed into New Mexico State. Auburn, Alabama, I think we're all in agreement. We're sold. Auburn covers a couple of scores this week. How about we keep it in the SEC in a game where both teams don't have their starting quarterback? One team looking to finish the regular season undefeated. The other just wants to go to a bowl game and maybe keep its head coach. We turn to Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators to sell us why Florida can cover 6.5 against Florida State.
The Florida Gators can cover and will cover the 6.5 point spread against the Florida State Seminoles. Because look at the quarterback situation right now. Tate Rodemaker for Florida State replacing Jordan Travis. Max Brown for Florida replacing Graham Mertz. Look at what they did last week. Max Brown went on the road against number 9 Missouri, losing, brought this team back and gave them the lead. And then the Florida Gators defense playing against an offense that is going to be better than Florida State, especially without Jordan Travis at the helm. They came back and they took the lead. But this Florida Gators offense, they're still going to be fine. In fact, they might be better, more deep shots, a dual threat quarterback there. Florida can cover this. It's a rivalry game. It's in Gainesville. It's going to be close. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be messy. And Florida is going to cover a 6.5 point spread.
First and foremost, I don't like this game. I don't think this is going to be a very fun football game to watch. And I can remember, you'll think back, 6 or 7 years ago, Florida sucked, Florida State sucked. I think they were both around 5-6, 6-5 going into the matchup. And it was just a bad, gross football game. Now, much different. Florida's in that spot. Florida State is not. But due to quarterback injuries, I see this one being so ugly. I'm going to give Brandon a pass here. Kenton, I see it being so ugly that Florida can cover.
Yeah, and I could see that as a possibility. I could also see this as a possibility where the Noles have too much talent on the perimeter. I mean, it's tough for me to kind of get away from that. And I've got something for you here because there's something.
What do you got for me, Ken? What do you got?
There's something that I need to say that I know Brendan is going to hate, but the reality is LinkedIn Billy is back.
Yes.
Muted again. Listen, now I've been muted again because I love you, Brendan, but I'm sorry. I just don't trust Billy Napier's decision making at all. And do I trust Norvell's all that much? No, but Norvell has the better horses in the stable. And if you have the better Larrys and Joes, you can make more of those clock mismanagement errors. You can make more of those fumbling away moments where it's like, what are you doing? But you have much better players. I don't think that Florida will cover at all. I love you, Brandon, but they're not going to cover in this one.
Dono, they just want to go to a bowl game, man. Please tell me they can go to a bowl game.
See, no. And it's not because of what Brandon said. He did about as good of a job as you can do trying to sell me why. It's the number that I don't like because Florida State, they're more than 6.5 points better than Florida. That's just the bottom line, right? And listen, you're down to 2 backup quarterbacks. I know losing Jordan Travis is the bigger loss than losing Graham Mertz, but Rodemaker has something that Max Brown doesn't have enough of, and that's experience. He's, I think, a 4th-year junior, even a 5th-year junior, because the COVID year always confuses me. He's been in college football for a very, very long time. He's got to manage the game. He's got to get the football to Keon Coleman, who's just a stud of all studs. He's got to get the football out to his playmakers. And then when you talk about perimeter, Kenton, it's on both sides of the football because Florida State's defensive backfield, their press man coverage, they're going to give Max Brown and Florida a really, really tough time in this game. I could see this game being ugly because, again, you're down to 2 backup quarterbacks, and it's unfortunate people don't get to watch Jordan Travis do his thing, and I wish him a speedy recovery. I say that despite the fact he plays for a rival of the team I cover. I never want to see anyone get hurt, and that looked ugly last week. But Florida State is more than a touchdown better than Florida. They're going to cover.
Boys, Florida has 2 running backs that are good at the thing that we call football. 700+ yards for both of them. And in a week where throwing the football will be a rare and welcome commodity if done successfully, the team that dominates in the run game has a shot. And Florida State gives up 140 rush yards per game. That is 47th in the country. Therefore, Florida, which, knowing this, Billy Napier and staff are just going to throw the ball 50 times. If Florida just runs the football, they at least keep it close. If this was a 10-point spread, which is what it probably would have been if everybody's healthy, then I really start to consider Florida State. But I'm still Florida, that is. I'm still leaning the Gators in a 22-16 game where you look up and say, how on God's earth did we get to this conclusion? But I'm going to go Florida plus 6.5 this week and keep my job with our producer, Brandon. That is this week's Sell Me Why. Last week, guys, we're getting on the cusp of our final Sell Me Whys next week for conference finals or the conference championship weekend. We'll have those as well. But coming up, let's get into Oregon State, Oregon, some more of your Michigan, Ohio State, some Alabama and Auburn, and your booms and busts. But first, we take it to Dono.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
It is time for our booms and bust. My first boom got to be Dono's shirt. That is unbelievable. My first bust might be Dono's hat. We'll see. We'll over the course of the rest of the segment, I'll try to even out where I go with those. Dono, let's take it to you first. Your booms, your bust this week.
Yeah, so in the spirit of Thanksgiving and in the spirit of the holiday season, I'm
Only
going no bus. I'm going straight boom ticket. I'm going the straight. I like to do this when I can. Or in the
spirit of what you do almost every week.
I was just about to say, this is not a new spirit for Dono. This is a spirit he channels often.
I was impressed with Georgia, big picture and small picture, right? And I expected them to beat up on Tennessee. They did that 38-10. But most importantly, Georgia became the first SEC team to go unbeaten in conference play 3 years in a row since they adopted the 8-game league format back in 1992. So they've done something that, hasn't been done in that conference in decades. That's impressive. And I know that maybe I don't give them enough respect as a national championship contender because I've been very hot on the Michigan tip throughout the season. But Georgia, they've been getting better, guys, throughout the season because we had some concerns about them early on. That's a boom for me. And it pains me to do this, but I'm going to give Notre Dame a boom, right? They crushed Wake Forest 45-7, which in itself, maybe not a huge accomplishment. Wake Forest is a sub 500 team, but I'm sure it felt good for Sam Hartman to go out there, have a big game, and throw for 4 touchdowns against his former team. So I thought that was a boom for me. Style points and everything, they got it done.
When I think... you know what, Kenton? I'm still workshopping. I've got my booms and busts, but I'm starting to have second thoughts on my bust. Let's take it to you here.
In the spirit of being the anti-Dono, I'm going all bust this week. All bust like Pamela Anderson or Dolly Parton, according to Drake C. Told. But that's neither here nor there.
I'm just saying, hear me out.
Our ears are closed, Drake. Our ears are closed, Drake and C. Told. Now, with that being said, I've got 2 busts for you. Kentucky, come on down. The Big Blue Wall has been a Big Blue bust this year. Boy, if it wasn't for Sweet Baby Ray, I don't know how many games this team would have run. Of course, I'm referring to Ray Davis. Devin Leary has been an abject failure at quarterback for this team. Let me tell you something. Those receivers could hate every defensive back that they go against. They could be married to them. They still couldn't get any separation. For Christ's sake, please do something offensively besides Ray up the middle, Ray to the right, Ray to the left. Find something offensively. And the next bust, Duke football. Come on down. Come on down. Because we all talked about you so good. We all said, Mike Elko, that's the winningest season ever for a first-time Duke head coach. And then you start off this season by beating Clemson. But, boy, since Riley Leonard went down, that's been tough for you, hasn't it? This team has won a combined 2-4 since Riley Leonard went down after starting 4-0 with a 28-7 victory over Clemson. Their latest loss, might I add, being against the mighty Who's of UVA. Despicable, disgusting, downright sad. Duke, second bust of the week.
Boys, my boom this week is Tyler from Spartanburg.
Yes, they're ranked again. How the hell did that happen?
We're going to look back at Clemson. PTS. Pre-Tyler from Spartanburg. That's what this season he helped them. I can only hope they invite him in the locker room. Just, he comes out this week, talks to the team, wishes them luck. This is a different Clemson team. They have played with a new fervor. They have been, they didn't blow out North Carolina, but this game was never in doubt. They had the lead. It was commanding at least, and they've done that a couple of weeks in a row. Now moving to 7-4 from what seemed like an unsalvageable season, 8-4 would be a big win for Dabo's team that was floundering a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know if I can give Clemson itself a boom this week, but I'm going to give Tyler from Spartanburg my boom. And I'm going to give another boom to the thicker kicker. Florida goes, I mean, they've got the upset in hand. They're going to upset a top 10 team on the road in Columbia, and Harrison Mevis. Now, granted, he didn't set up the drive to hit the field goal, but he just keeps doing this to folks. The thicker kicker from Missouri. Never trust a college kicker unless his name is Harrison Mevis. He has been lights out for the Tigers. He's one of my booms this week. Now for my bus, Utah. Kyle Whitting. This team owned the Pac-12. Two-time defending Pac-12 champions. Can you take the crown? The last ever Pac-12 championship. Can you do it? They're far from it. They got dominated by Oregon State earlier this year, and then this week it wasn't even competitive from kickoff against Arizona. Utah has been so disappointing at 7-4. Moving into the Big 12, they're no longer the player in the new Big 12, which they could have asserted their dominance to do so. Now, guys, this would have been a wild thing to say 8 weeks ago. Arizona is in a better spot headed to the new Big 12 than Utah is. Arizona. Last but not least, I'm going to give a bus to Washington. And I know,
a busty victory.
I know Washington wins the football game. They went on the road against a top 15 Oregon State team. They closed it out defensively. They didn't score a point in the second half, and they won. But what I watched from Washington on Saturday, to me, did not look like a team that is competitive with an Ohio State or with a Michigan. I did not watch a Washington team that can come close to a Georgia. And I keep seeing, look, Michael Penix Jr. didn't, where did he go? Apex of the Heisman conversation. And now we've started to turn our attention to other people. Bo Nix is getting more hype than Michael Penix Jr. for a guy that I thought could walk away with this trophy 3 weeks ago. And he throws for 160 yards against Oregon State. Where is my Heisman moment? Where is my Heisman moment from him? It's going to become what last year was a statistics race. There wasn't a Heisman moment for Caleb Williams. He just blew everybody else out of the water statistically. Jaden Daniels is staring down the barrel of that because Michael Penix Jr. he's just not finishing the year strong enough to take that trophy away. Ken, I see it in your eyes. You have some sort of commentary here.
I'm devastated, disappointed by this because I was the only person that picked Washington to win last week. That's a game where both of you saw them walking out of Corvallis with a loss because
what are you talking about?
Because of the weather.
Didn't I pick Washington? I don't even remember now. You got to review the tape.
Oh, now we got to go to break. And I wanted to show you your love on the PTS Clemson being much worse than the ATS Clemson. Yeah. But here you go, bringing in Penix where Penix doesn't belong. This man and this team, I do agree that they did not look like they could compete with those teams. Here's my belief. Every team has 3 types of games, okay? You have your best game of the year where you're firing on all cylinders. Nothing you can do goes wrong. You kick it off the upright, it bounces in. And then you have your worst game of the year where everything goes wrong. Your handoffs are sloppy. Your footwork is sloppy. You can't block nobody. You can't stop nobody. But other than that, you're fine. And then you got all the other games in between where that's who you are. We've seen who Washington is time and time and time again. And how can we say that this Oregon team looks special, looks ready to compete, looks ready to do all the things if this Washington team beat them? And that was one of Oregon's best games of the year. It's not like we watched them and like, oh, Oregon is pissing down their leg. They're just playing completely uncharacteristic ball today.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. The Heisman should be Jaden Daniels because I don't believe it's a team reward. I believe it should go to the best player in college football, which I believe he is. But with that being said, this Washington team being a bust, it's just, I just don't understand. You hurt me here, Drake.
Let me ask Drake a follow-up because what he's saying about Washington, it's interesting and a little ironic that this is the week that they jump ahead of Florida State and get in the top 4. I would imagine whether they admit it or not, that has a lot to do with Jordan Travis being out for the year, right? I mean, I know that they claim, they can claim whatever it is about the resumes and not looking at that, but obviously I don't view Florida State as a team that's going to win a national championship with Rob Baker at quarterback. It's just not going to happen. So I guess I understand that has a lot to do with them dropping out of that top 4.
For me, if Michael Penix Jr. goes down this week, God forbid, if that happens and they bring in a backup who throws 3 interceptions and Washington wins 21-20 over Washington State, there's a reason we did away with the BCS. Now human beings can help make these decisions. And if we see that, after a couple of weeks, Washington's not equipped or they lose the Pac-12 championship, then at that point, there's no way to let them in. I am maybe where I'm coming from more so. We're at a point in the season where Bus can't keep being Wake Forest, right? Bus can be Duke, but at this point, now it's when we talk about the top 10, now of these undefeated teams, somebody's going to have to be a bust because there are only 4 playoff spots.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to not get in for some specific reason. And the way that I've watched Washington play, at least 2-3 of the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've thought, oh, man, that I keep going back to the Arizona State game and thinking, ooh, I get it, right? Michigan struggles with Maryland. I still think Michigan might be the best team in the country. For Washington, I need to see that moment, the dominant moment, the Oregon game. We keep talking about how if these two teams rematch, Oregon likely wins because it felt so fluky when Washington won the first time around. I know a lot of SEC fans would agree, a lot of Big Ten fans would agree. I don't think Washington holds Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. I don't think Washington holds their jockstrap right now. And for that reason, I give them my bust this week. And before we go into our picks of the week, I do want to parlay that into a conversation about the college football playoff. We are sitting in scenario land. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Alabama all have a shot at the college football playoff. Oh, and by the way, Louisville's sitting there too. They need some stuff to happen, but they're right there. There are 9 teams coming into this week that are all hoping for a college football playoff, which might be the most that I can remember going into rivalry week that had a legitimate case to make their way to that Final Four. Ken, how do you sort this thing out? If you had to choose, do you see a definitive 4?
So here's the thing. I really don't see 4 that are head and shoulders above regardless of the next 2 weeks goings on and happenings. Like, let's just be honest, right? If Oregon loses to Oregon State this week, even if they beat Washington in the rematch, do you feel good about saying, hey, you all are in now? I don't.
Well, especially if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship, then do we let Oregon in over Georgia? I don't think we can.
No, I don't think you can.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, there is so much that could go wrong, could happen here, at the end of the day, the Michigan and Ohio State game, that could be a game where you look at and you say, man, the loser of this thing is happy because they don't have anything else to worry about. Hey, we are where we are. We just got to wait for everybody else to sort their stuff out. But we are right where we are. This is a year where we're seeing so much parity. We're seeing so much, hey, any team could be it, right? Even though there's kind of an underlying feeling with all of us that in the media, we won't talk about it because it makes for a short show. Like in TV, we're like, hey, if the protagonist would have just went to school, everything would have been okay. Well, then you don't have Snowfall. The 7 seasons of show don't happen if Franklin stays in school. Now you're out of show. The reality is all of us kind of had an underlying feeling that Georgia's going to mollywop everybody in front of them in the playoff. But with that being said, there are so many amazing ways that this thing could play out to where, I mean, who knows? How do you keep Georgia out if they lose to Alabama?
Yeah.
What do you do with Texas if they went out in dominant fashion? What do you do with some of these teams? If there is a moment all of a sudden where Michigan looks completely human against both Ohio State and in the conference championship game, what do you do there? Like, these are moments where you're asking yourself, all right, who belongs in, who gets out? It could be anybody's ball game. And I got one more sound for you for the day. Hey, Roddy Rich Rodemaker is the 2023 Cardale Jones. If they go undefeated, put them in the playoff. That's where they belong. I don't want to hear anything about
and that's something that makes this so tough for me, guys, because it's like if Florida State goes undefeated, you feel like they deserve to be in, but at the same time, I look at, to me, the best 4 teams, and obviously it doesn't always shake out to be the best 4 teams. I think in no particular order, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State to me. And Oregon is like very, very close, knocking on that door. And maybe I could say the same thing about Washington, despite the Drake Toll slander, right? But I think the first 4 that I mentioned to me are the best 4 teams. I can't wait for the 12-team expansion because I just feel like you have these debates where it's like you try to go resume, does an undefeated team that's maybe not as good as a one-loss team, do they deserve to be in? I just want more opportunities for teams because I have a hard time with this. I can look at my 4 best teams that I believe would beat any of the other teams in that picture. But then at the same time, there's going to be a team like Florida State. If they go undefeated, how do you deny them based on the resume? So I have a tough time with this. But for me, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, that to me, those are the best 4 teams in college football right now.
I think so. And so many folks have made the case that the expanded college football playoff is going to kill the game or kill regular season matchups. And look, maybe the game is not playing for a college football playoff spot, but then in the not playing for a national championship, maybe you take that out of it. But now you create playoff atmosphere games where all 8 of these teams can go toe to toe for a national championship. Now you're giving an opportunity. You might leave Texas out of the college football playoff, and they could have gone on a magical run to win the whole thing with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. Now you at least afford them that opportunity in this new era of college football. We're pushing a break here, Donna. We'll pitch it to you and then come back with our picks for Rivalry Week.
I used to get nervous about buying last-minute tickets. Now, man, I look forward to it because I get the best deals at game time. I can remember recommending somebody $1 tickets to a major college football game earlier this season. They were thanking me for weeks after that. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, a musical theater show, a comedy show, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can see views from your seat right there on the app. And the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, guys, especially this holiday season. You want to give the gifts of tickets to a friend and family member. You got to keep in mind the Game Time guarantee, which is going to give you peace of mind. That means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College. All one word, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, let's jump into our Black Friday pick'em in Autzen Stadium, Oregon State, a Friday night primetime matchup. Dono, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm picking Oregon to win the game. I think the game might be closer than the spread indicates. We talked about that a little bit earlier on, but Oregon, to me, one of the most well-rounded teams in college football. I put them in kind of that same conversation I put in my top 4. They're right on the outside looking into me. Bo Nix has been unstoppable for most of this year. He's right in there in that Heisman conversation. Oregon's going to win this game. I just think it's going to be closer than 2 touchdowns.
Kenton.
Bo Nix in his 50-11th go-around in college football finally figures it out, gets it right, gets to the conference championship. And this game is one where I'm looking at DJU and saying, hey, you can turn the tide of this thing, brother. If you show up big time, you will win this game. But I think Oregon wins. Oregon State covers. We got a close one, but I'm going Oregon.
Did you know, I saw yesterday the draft, the recruiting rankings, Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler with the same recruiting class? Did you know that?
Wow.
Did you know that?
Jesus Christ.
We make a lot of fun of Bo Nix for being old, and he's not as old as I thought. I think Max Duggan might be in there, too. There are a couple of those guys who are like, oh, interesting. That I started college the same year as Bo Nix. Bo, I'm sorry, man. It's not that, which, I'm 13. I was a wonder kid. It's a wild thing. I graduated college at 12. I'm going to go with Oregon here as well. Bo Nix and company get it done at home. Let's take you to one that we've already previewed quite a bit in this show, but I'm going to ask about it again. Alabama and Auburn. Dono, give me a definitive.
I'm going to give you definitive Alabama by 3. I think there's going to be a game-winning field goal situation, and we're all going to be wondering, is it going to be a kick 6 on the 10-year anniversary of that kick 6 in 2013? I think Alabama is going to handle their business, but Auburn will create the usual chaos, especially at Jordan-Hare. But Bama, to me, is going to squeak by.
Yeah. Kenton, where do you go?
Give me Bama 2014. I don't know why, but this offense, they seem to have it figured out. They seem to have things rolling now, but I got a gut feeling that when they go into Jordan-Hare, all of a sudden things are going to go haywire with that offense. But 2 things to trouble: run game, defense. They'll be all right. They'll be just fine. 2014 Bama.
Let's take you to the Apple Cup, Washington and Washington State. Since I already gave Washington a bust this week, is there any way an upset's pulled off in this big rivalry game, Dono?
No, I think Washington got their slight wake-up call, especially with that 4-second half last week. I think Washington's going to take care of business. Another relatively close rivalry game. I'm going Washington by about a touchdown.
Kenton?
Trent, I'm going to touch your shoulder when I say this, because I don't know if you watch the show or not, Trent Pettis, but I'm going to touch your shoulder when I say this. Get your ears together and get to New York, Trent. Go have your Heisman moment in this game. Dominate your rival. I don't care if it's not a huge game. I don't care about – there are a lot of voters that are going to vote before the conference championship game. This is your last chance to impress, Trent. Go out there and dominate this football game, brother. I got Washington.
All right, quickly, Clemson or South Carolina, Kenton?
Clemson. South Carolina's not going to a bowl game.
Dono?
Clemson's going to win this game. And it's going to be crazy when, we're going to look back at this season where Clemson's going to win 8 or even 9 games, depending on their bowl, and say, yeah, that was the down year for Clemson. Like, oh, they were so bad this year and they still win 8 or 9 games. Dabo, we've given him, a little bit of a little hell in the past, but he's still doing a tremendous job there.
Guys, before we get to the big one, which is almost what the rivalry's name is, there is a very weird aura around this weekend in college football. Let me take you through a couple of these lines. Texas Tech, 14-point spread. Penn State, Michigan State, 22-point spread. Oregon State, 14-point spread. But it doesn't end there. A double-digit spread in LSU and A&M, in Alabama and Auburn, Arizona State. Double digits in games like Oklahoma State, BYU, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Washington State, Washington. Everywhere you look this weekend in college football, the Georgia Tech, Georgia, Notre Dame, Stanford, double-digit spreads on a rivalry weekend. But the one game that breaks the mold is the game. Kenton Gibbs. It's ABC. It's ABC's college football game day, whatever they do. But it's Fox for the actual game. Ohio State, Michigan, in Ann Arbor. The game. Who do you go with?
I've talked about Maserati Marvel. We've heard about Henderson, and we're hearing about Kyle McCord getting it together. That defensive line of Ohio State is turning it on and all that good stuff. Michigan going through so much turmoil, firing coaches, firing assistants, firing staffers, no more sign stealing. Give me the boys in the winged helmet. Too physical, too tough. Running game with 2 backs, 2 foam, baby Keem, double cellular in that backfield. I got Michigan winning a close one. And Blake Corum having a moment that he's not going to go to New York, but if he did have that type of season, this would be his Heisman moment.
All right, Dono. How do you feel? We've been saying Michigan might be the best team in college football. Can they prove it again this week with a maybe okay quarterback?
I've been trying to talk myself into picking Ohio State for the last few days, just because I don't know. There'd be something fun about seeing them pull off that mild upset. They've got the 2-game losing streak to Michigan, everything going on in Ann Arbor. But I agree with Kenton. I think the physicality is going to be the difference here. And as I mentioned, the team that runs for more yards has won every matchup in this rivalry since 2001. It's hard for me not to expect Michigan to be the team that does that this time around. But I might even lock in Ohio State plus 3.5 if I can still get that number by tomorrow. I think it's going to be really close, but I just see Michigan edging it out.
We have seen each of these teams play a close-ish but low-scoring game against Penn State. Each of those games followed kind of that same, all right, Penn State's got a shot. They're one big play away, but the defense never let up. As I look at this game, I think Michigan is the better football team. They are playing at home. They have, to me, more emotion invested in this game with everything off of the field. I'm going to go Michigan in one of those fun 16-13, 19-13 knockdown, drag-out noon games on Fox. Give me the Wolverines in this one. The desk likes a Harbaugh-less Michigan to take out Ohio State in the game. That is Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC and Locked On Wolfpack, Alex Dono of Locked On Canes, Drake Toll with you of Locked On Big 12. This has been, it always will be. Thank you for making it your lunchtime. Listen every single Friday. Locked On College Football Kickoff Live.